This is the Microschool Minute, your weekly dose of microschooling news and events.
In this week's edition of the Microschool Minute, Texas State Representative Brad Buckley has introduced House Bill No. 3, outlining the Texas House's version of an education savings account program. Under this proposal, eligible students would receive 85% of the average state and local funding typically allocated per student in public schools, capped at $30,000 annually. Students with disabilities would qualify for additional funding, depending on the funding their public school district would have received. Homeschooled students are also included, but limited to $2,000 per year. If demand exceeds available funds, priority is given to students with disabilities and low-income families with income thresholds set at varying percentages of the federal poverty line. In comparison, Senate Bill No. 2, filed by Senator Brad Creighton, offers $10,000 annually for students attending accredited private schools, $11,500 for students with disabilities, and $2,000 for homeschooled students. Senate Bill No. 2 also prioritizes low-income families and students with disabilities, defining low income as up to 500% of the federal poverty line. Both bills aim to expand educational options while emphasizing support for underserved communities. Texas House Bill 3102 proposes exempting school districts from recapture requirements under the public school finance system if they experience a decline in student enrollment due to education savings account programs. The bill amends Section 48.257 of the state's education code, introducing a provision that waives recapture obligations for affected districts. This adjustment aims to address funding challenges if enrollment drops because of these programs, dispelling a popular fear of school choice opponents through compromise. If passed, the changes will take effect on September 1st of this year. The Idaho Senate has narrowly approved House Bill 93, a $50 million refundable tax credit program for private education expenses, by a 2015 vote. The measure now awaits Governor Brad Little's decision. And while the governor hasn't explicitly endorsed the bill, he previously expressed support for a private school choice program that is fair, responsible, transparent, and accountable. If signed into law, the bill would provide up to $5,000 in tax credits for non-public school students, with up to $7,500 available for students with special needs. Advocates argue the bill offers greater choice for families, while opponents, including the Idaho Education Association, claim it diverts critical resources from public schools. The legislation has sparked intense debate in the state, with supporters emphasizing safeguards such as income-based prioritization, a $50 million cap, and mandatory reporting to ensure accountability. Concerns also surround homeschool eligibility under the program, with some arguing it could undermine the independence of Idaho's homeschool community. Governor Little has 5 days to sign, veto, or allow the bill to become law without his signature. If enacted, it would mark a historic moment for private school choice in Idaho. North Dakota lawmakers are debating House Bill 1540, a proposal to use state funds to help families pay for private school tuition through education savings accounts. The bill, which has now passed the House and moved on to the Senate, would allocate 40% of per-student public school funding, about $4,400, to ESAs in the 2026 school year, increasing to 80%, around $8,800 in 2027. The projected cost is $40 million for 2025 to 2027 and nearly $150 million for the following 2 years. Supporters argue it provides families with more educational choices, while critics are worrying about its impact on public schools. The bill also mandates private school students receiving ESA funds to take standardized tests to evaluate the program's effectiveness. Lawmakers continue to weigh the potential benefits and drawbacks of this particular proposal. Despite attempts by some to dismantle them, universal school vouchers remained intact when the Wyoming Senate passed forward House Bill 199, the Wyoming Freedom Scholarship Act, on Wednesday. As now constructed, the program created by the bill would give up to $7,000 per child to any Wyoming family, regardless of income, for non-public school expenditures, like tuition, for their pre-K through high school students. The Senate's vote of 20-11 to pass the bill on its third reading clinched a victory for school choice activists who want to see all Wyoming parents given a chance to seek alternative education, like private or parochial schools, for their students. But it came amid a flood of constituent comments on the bill. Lawmakers reported, many of them adamantly opposed to a measure many see as a flagrant violation of the Wyoming Constitution. Senator Bill Landon, who voted no, questioned the urgency of the bill when Wyoming already has an education savings account program that's not even 2 months old. I'm not quite sure why, on this issue, the Wyoming Senate feels the urgency to have the accelerator all the way to the floor going 100 miles an hour, Landon said. Senator Charlie Scott said there is a reason for haste. "I see an urgency in getting started on this bill," he said. "We've got too many kids that are being left behind by our current K-12 system." Scott also welcomed litigation to test the constitutional questions. Before the measure heads to Governor Mark Gordon's desk, the House has to approve the Senate's amendments to House Bill 199 in the concurrence process. That could prove challenging, as key differences now exist within the House and Senate versions of the bill. Microschools are rapidly growing across the United States, offering new opportunities for families and educators. However, this growth has raised questions from state and local regulators, particularly around child care laws. These regulations, often designed for daycare centers, don't always align with the unique nature of microschools, especially those serving elementary-age children. Because education laws vary by state, microschools operate under different frameworks depending on local rules. In states with strict private school regulations, many microschools function as learning or tutoring centers under homeschool guidelines. Meanwhile, states with lighter regulations may allow microschools to register as private schools, though some still choose the tutoring center model to avoid regulatory ambiguity. One common challenge appears to be the misclassification of microschools as childcare providers, triggering compliance with extensive daycare regulations. These laws, often hundreds of pages long, can be burdensome and irrelevant to educational programs. A new report written in collaboration with the National Microschooling Center seeks to help. To avoid complications, they say microschools should clearly define their operations, separate early childhood programs if offered from K-12 education, and communicate proactively with inspectors. If questioned, microschool operators should document all interactions, request specific rule citations, and politely challenge inappropriate jurisdiction claims. Understanding state-specific definitions of childcare is crucial, and clarifying these distinctions can help avoid misrepresentation. This underscores the need for updated laws that recognize the distinct role that microschools play in serving educational, not childcare needs. This week, Iowa State Auditor Bob Sand accused Governor Kim Reynolds' former administration of withholding key documents needed to ensure proper financial oversight of the state's Education Savings Accounts program. Sand's office identified 3 material weaknesses in financial reporting related to the program, which cost the state over $129 million in the fiscal year 2024. The ESA program reimburses families for private school tuition and other qualified expenses. Sand claims the lack of transparency prevents his office from verifying safeguards against waste and fraud. Meanwhile, Reynolds' administration argues the requested documents fell outside of the audit scope and insists a separate engagement letter is needed to proceed. Sand has responded, pointing to a 2023 Iowa Supreme Court ruling stating that his office does not require such a letter. The Iowa Department of Education and Department of Revenue issued a joint statement themselves defending the ESA program, emphasizing their commitment to fiscal responsibility. As the dispute escalates, the clash highlights broader tensions over transparency over the cost of school choice initiatives. New data shows how New Hampshire's Education Freedom Account program is reshaping how families invest in their children's education. Designed to provide financial flexibility, the program grants families an average of $5,204 per child annually. The funds allow parents to customize educational expenses from curriculum and online courses to extracurriculars like skiing, music lessons, and art classes. For Kristen, a homeschooling mother of 3, the $20,000 her family receives yearly has been transformative. Her eldest son, Bryce, who has a near photographic memory and faces medical challenges, thrives on tailored resources like a $2,000 microscope and online math classes. In the 2022-23 school year, families spent $3.9 million of EFA funds on non-private school expenses, with 44% going to instructional materials, and the remaining funds covering tutoring, summer programs, and even sports. Approved vendors like Amazon received $1.4 million, reflecting parents' demand for convenience and variety. Supporters argue this flexibility is the program's strength, empowering families to address their children's unique educational needs. The Reform Alliance is teaming up with the Arkansas Department of Education's Office for School Choice and Parent Empowerment to bring you the latest info on education options in Arkansas. This statewide tour features town hall-style presentations where families can learn about all the different school choices available. The tour kicked off on February 11th in Little Rock and will continue through early May, with stops every Tuesday and Wednesday across the state. Upcoming stops this week include on February 25th at 6 p.m. at the House of Opportunity in Forest City, and February 26th at noon at the West Memphis Public Library in West Memphis. Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays has delivered justice in a high-profile fraud case involving the Empowerment Scholarship Account program. Phoenix residents Jadaika Johnson and Raymond Johnson were caught red-handed unlawfully pocketing ESA funds that they had no right to claim, money that was directly tied to a calculated fraud scheme. Both individuals pleaded guilty to facilitation to commit money laundering on January 17, 2025. Their sentence? 3 years of supervised probation handed down on February 13th, along with a hefty restitution bill of $196,000. This decisive action underscores the state's unwavering commitment to transparency with their care to hold bad actors accountable in order to protect taxpayer dollars. The Utah Fits-All voucher program launched in 2023 with $42.5 million. Fast forward to today, and lawmakers are now looking to double its funding to $162 million to meet the growing demand. With 80% of recipients being homeschoolers, officials now want to tighten the rules to prevent misuse and to ensure transparency. House Bill 455 proposes stricter income verification, annual residency checks, and random audits of how funds are being spent. Families would also need to notify the program within 5 days if their child re-enrolls in public school, a rule meant to address cases where students received vouchers but stayed in public schools. The bill also adds new reporting requirements for the organization managing the program, ACE, the Alliance for a Choice in Education. They'll need to track and report spending trends, including how much is going towards extracurriculars and how many families hit the proposed 20% spending cap. With the bill now up for debate on the House floor, big changes could be coming for Utah families. A proposal to let students in struggling public school districts use taxpayer dollars for private education has now stalled in the Mississippi House. House Bill 1433, known as the Flexible and Rightful Education Enrollment Act, missed its chance for a vote by Thursday's deadline. Introduced by Representative Rob Robertson, the bill aimed to give students in districts rated D or F within the past 5 years the option to use state per-pupil funding, approximately $6,995, to attend higher-rated public or private schools. Under the bill, eligible students were required to first seek transfer to a qualifying public school within 30 miles. If no such option existed, they could then select an accredited private school, with state funds managed through an education savings account. However, the proposal faced strong opposition from education groups and teachers' unions, who argued it would harm public schools in the state. Critics also pointed to Mississippi's recent academic gains as evidence against such measures. Despite House Speaker Jason White prioritizing school choice this season, the bill failed to gain enough traction. Meanwhile, a separate bill easing public school transfers has passed the House and now awaits Senate review. In the post-judgment dissolution case of Carosi v. Carosi, the Connecticut Appellate Court affirmed the trial court's decision to partially grant a motion filed by the plaintiff. The defendant appealed the ruling, claiming the court exceeded its authority by ordering the transfer of custodianship of a 529 education savings account established for their child's benefit from her to the plaintiff. The court ruled that this transfer was within its statutory authority under Connecticut law. The decision emphasized that the account created after their divorce by mutual agreement was intended for their child's education and was not a modification of marital property division. The couple's marriage was dissolved in 2008, incorporating a settlement agreement that detailed their child's educational expenses. Their agreement required $50,000 from the sale of their marital home to be deposited into a 529 account, initially under the plaintiff's custodianship. It wasn't until years later a dispute arose over custodianship, and the court ruled in the plaintiff's favor, noting the importance of preserving the account for its intended purpose, funding their now college-age child's education. Linda McMahon's nomination as U.S. Secretary of Education advanced last week with a narrow 12-11 Senate committee vote along party lines. McMahon, who served as head of the Small Business Administration under Trump, expressed her belief that the Department of Education is failing students and needs radical changes. In a heated Senate confirmation hearing, McMahon made her position crystal clear: reform, not removal. McMahon assured senators that the department isn't closing its doors anytime soon. Instead, she's eyeing a bold restructuring, potentially shifting key programs, citing that the goal isn't defunding, it's efficiency. This week, we spotlight Springbrook Christian Academy in Wellsboro, Pennsylvania. They offer a Christ-centered education, blending classical and Charlotte Mason philosophies. Springbrook focuses on seeking truth, compassion, community, responsibility, and transformation. With strong parental partnership, they cultivate critical thinking and a love of learning, providing a biblically faithful, holistic education. Springbrook prepares students intellectually, spiritually, and socially, fostering lifelong learners. Keep up the great work, Springbrook. If you know of a microschool that deserves a shout out, drop a comment and let us know about the work that they're doing. Thank you for tuning in to the Microschool Minute, your weekly review of microschooling news and events. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you'd like to support us, consider leaving a review. Until next week, happy microschooling.